Hey everybody, welcome to this issue of Staffing Monthly. And I am thrilled to bring this guest on. This is somebody that I've actually been trying to get to participate in the magazine for a little while. And because she is in such high demand, she's made us all wait, but it is worth the wait. This is somebody that has immense insight into this industry, and the thing that I love about what she does is she focuses on the higher level strategic stuff and making sure organizations are built right, you know. And so this is somebody, if you're not familiar, Amy Bingham, she has actually been in the industry for 25 plus years, but more specifically as to why we're talking today is she's actually had her own consultancy practice for 17 years with Bingham Consulting. And she has made a name for herself. You probably already know who she is. You've probably been to one of her workshops, been through a course, received training, seen her speak at any one of the staffing events out there. She's really been in high demand with all of it because the formula that she shares is so foundational. And I am thrilled to be able to have this conversation. And ultimately, Amy, I just want to say thank you for being here today and sharing with the Staffing Monthly audience.
Well, thank you so much, Dan. My ego is like pumped up now. Wow, you just made my day.
I,
No, I'm
I,
excited. I'm excited to have this conversation. I always love talking all things staffing and could probably do that for hours. So I'll try to contain myself.
I love it. And if we run out of time, I'll always welcome you back with open arms because I've heard you speak. I've been through your trainings. I know other people that have, and it's all been really good. But the one thing I really wanted to pick your brain on today, and it's funny because you just mentioned this before we hit record, was that the economic times are different, right? And but there's still this trusted formula within staffing that if people can really get it down, it can help them navigate these uncertain times. So that's what I want to ask you. You've got an amazing practice. Everyone knows who you are. You work with a lot of agencies. What are those challenges that you're seeing presented to these agencies given the times of uncertainty, and how are you advising them on how to build their organization the right way to be sustainable and thrive?
Yeah, great question. So in preparation for this discussion, I wrote down three things. But let's talk about the economic piece first, because I think we're in very interesting times. We have been in an environment for many years now of very low unemployment, skill shortages abound. It's been all about, candidates, candidates, candidates. Can't find enough people, can't keep people. I do a lot of work with my clients. I mean, they certainly are, the experts, right? They're in the trenches doing it relative to finding candidates for external jobs, right? For flexible staff or direct hire. They're figuring that out. There's a lot of help in that area. What I see too much of, sadly, is turnover internally. And because internal turnover is so challenging to manage and get on top of, right? Potentially, that's where I like to focus my energy. So there's a candidate shortage everywhere, and that includes in the staffing industry.
Yeah.
So there's a number of things you have to do, and that includes being very proactive about direct recruiting, right? Not posting, just like we discussed for flexible staffing, but not posting and waiting, right? For if you're in a search for a recruiter or salesperson or sales leader. I've got a number of clients looking for sales leaders right now, because more on that in a few minutes. But yeah, that it's how to find those people, how to onboard them in a way that is memorable for them, that will have them say. I mean, studies show the way somebody's onboarded in the first 2 weeks will make or break whether they even stay.
Yeah,
So, all
absolutely.
of the things we talk to our clients about, we have to be doing. And I see too many gaps there with in terms of who we hire, how we hire. We cut a lot of corners, I think, as an industry. We'll follow extensive hiring processes for our clients, but we will have a couple conversations and extend a job offer in the industry.
It's
And
crazy,
and that
right?
Yeah, it is. It is. And some of that is just desperation to fill jobs. Again, we're employers too, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's a number of things to think about there, right? You want to find the right people, give them the right candidate experience, onboard them with care, have a career path, meet employees' needs today, have flexible work options available to them. I mean, employees are very loud about what they're looking for today.
Yeah.
Pay them fairly, give them opportunities to learn new things, and allow them to work, if not on their own terms, in some type of flexible capacity that meets their needs. So if you can do those three things, and then you layer on top of that, obviously, a positive culture, diversity, the things that today's employee is really looking for, which is vastly different from the past. So I think staffing firms as employers of internal talent have to get that right. When they don't get that right, there's too much turnover. And Express Personnel, just in collaboration with Harris Interactive, just put a study out that the average cost of turnover is almost $60,000, 57,000, I think, and change per
Oof.
head, right? And that's at the producer level.
Oof.
Yeah, so it's really costly. So managing, finding, and retaining talent is the headline that I think we have to think about, not just for our customer base, but internally as well.
I think that makes a ton of sense. And I've got a very specific question. I love that this is what you called out first, because I really have a real life example that I want to pick your brain on here. But I agree with you. Staffing agencies, it's kind of like the mechanic that has the broken down car, or the carpenter that they've got all the unfinished, housing projects, right? It's like we're experts at it for everyone else other than ourselves. And I love that you pointed that out, because it's so true. And in reality, like we need to lead the way. Like we need to be making the best hires, following the process exquisitely internally first, and then it will cascade out. So I love that you called that out. But that turnover number is huge, $60,000. This was actually a question I wanted to ask when you were speaking, is that how do you balance that? Like when you're working with your staffing clients and they're like, man, Amy, I got this person, like they're a great producer, but they're asking for like $5,000 or $10,000 more base salary. We've all been there. Like, how do you balance that out? Like, how do you justify, meeting their kind of, I guess, wage demands or salary demands against production and goals, and just knowing like, is it worth it, and what's the risk if I don't do it and they leave? Like, and now you just quantified that. So how do you navigate that situation specifically?
Yeah, so it is it is a balancing act. I mean, I've had clients do any number of creative things, including funding benefits, right? Fully funding benefits, which is a cost to the employer.
Yeah.
Including if the cost of health insurance, for example, goes up year to year,
Big
they
time.
are adjusting salaries accordingly if the employee cost increases as well, right? So lots of creative, that's just one example, lots
Right.
of creative ways to, for lack of a better phrase, throw money at people, right? Making sure that they understand the investments the firm is making in them beyond just base salary and commission. I mean, yeah, absolutely. You've got to pay above market value to get top talent. We're still in an environment where that's true. So you have to have a robust base salary above market. You have to have a very strategically thought out and planned commission incentive structure that allows people to make money sooner than later. So, the days of 90-day ramp ups before commission $1 kicks in, I mean, that doesn't work in today's world. So getting creative is important. Also helping employees understand the value. For example, in the benefits example, what does that mean? I mean, you really have to tack that onto your base salaries. Particularly today's younger worker doesn't put that together, right?
Yeah.
So thinking creatively, I think, is the challenge. And if someone's with you for a year, they sit down in front of you, they say, hey, I'm due a raise. Where's my raise? There are a number of ways to make that happen. If you have a merit increase process in place, then obviously that's what you're going to default to. But if you don't, how can you make the incentive plan perhaps a little richer for this person? Can you put this person in a lead role where now they're perhaps earning an override on, a very small team? So some of this is really aligned with career pathing, making sure we've got a next step ready for the employee who wants to move their career forward, versus just you're asking for money, I want to keep you absolutely at all costs. I'm going to meet your demand. There's danger in that, right?
Yeah.
Word gets around, so and so asked for money, they got money. There's got to be some skin in the game for the employee. So if they're asking for more money, what else can you give them to do that justifies, and that's a step forward for them in their careers, that justifies the extra dollars? So that I put that under the let's get creative about how we retain people category from a compensation perspective.
I love that. I love that. And so what are some of the kind of going back to the theme of this though? So you work with agencies out there and we're heading into uncertain times. I want to stay focused on that. What are some of the other challenges that you're seeing out there today that you're kind of positioning yourself to advise your clients with?
Okay. So the first was finding and retaining internal talent.
Right.
The second is developing the industry's emerging leaders. So
Ooh,
the succession planning that most, particularly small to mid-sized firms, frankly, even the enterprise firms, don't necessarily, I think they'd probably say they don't do a great job with that either.
they
I
don't.
think there has to be, I mentioned talent development, so there has to be a very defined career path. There has to be a mentorship program. There has to be attention and discussion around who's going to take my job when I move on. And the urgency here is driven in large part by the baby boomers retiring.
Yeah.
So, and we've seen it in our industry, right? There are senior leaders. I mean, most of my mentors of the days of old, right, are gone. They've left the industry. And there's a gap. There certainly is talent um, to replace them, but is that talent ready? Right. That's part of the reason I developed the Millennial Mentors program for staffing leaders to help these emerging leaders get the basics down in terms of effective leadership, the differences between managing and leading, and a lot of things I teach them in that class. But that's what I'm passionate about. Let's help get some of these younger folks ready for bigger jobs. And so I think the company has to have some discussion and attention and a plan for that. And then the industry needs to meet that need. And certainly I'm not the only one doing it, right? But how do we help people get ready for more?
So I love that. And I love the fact that you aligned it with the first part that we just discussed. We're talking to that employee that might want to make more money. And instead of just handing out, raises all willy-nilly, you're saying, okay, let's work towards a career path. Let's say, where do you want to go? And this is what the next step. I love that you're aligning that to that career path. I want to get a little bit more tactical if we can, because I want the person, kind of watching this interview to be able to say, yeah, I want to be able to career path my people and I want to develop them along the way. How do I do that? So that's my question to you is how does we'll say a middle manager, we'll say a branch manager of a larger operation, how are they specifically developing their producers to ascend into that role of branch manager so they can eventually ascend into the role of regional manager or whatever that looks like? What are they doing on a performance management piece to make sure they're navigating that career path with their people?
Okay, so I just want to dovetail for a minute. I mentioned having a defined career path. So let's say you are a recruiting manager or a branch
Right.
manager of recruiters. There should be nothing preventing you from having multiple levels of a recruiting pool: sourcer, junior recruiter, senior recruiter, lead, recruiting manager. I mean, that's how many steps, right? Knowing that today that's the entry level job into the industry, and knowing Gen Z and who we typically recruit for those jobs, what's important to them, having multiple levels enables you to then put some structure around. Well, first of all, to put a career plan in front of someone, right, who is a mover shaker and really wants to make their mark in the organization quickly, sooner than later. Having that plan and then putting structure around how am I going to get what are the parameters that have somebody move from a sourcer to a junior recruiter, and what's my role in making that happen for this individual. So there are KPIs, right? There are ways to make sure that they hit certain metrics
Right.
that we're all familiar with. But beyond that, it's the one-on-one. That one-on-one is gold. If it's done effectively and artfully, that's where the manager, rather than just reviewing the production numbers and sending them on their way, That's where that discussion happens. Okay, let's talk about what's working. I might even open a one-on-one today by saying, what's working for you and what's not, right? And then let's talk about your goals beyond just your weekly KPIs. We can talk about that too, but let's talk about how we get you to the next step. I mean, the best mentor I ever had was the one who sat me down when I was in my early 20s and said, what do you want to do next? And I literally said to her, I haven't thought about it. No one's ever asked me that question. So
Right?
I was just, a little manager doing my thing. And she said, well, do you want my job? I said, yeah, that'd be great one day. So she said, let's get you, I don't plan on staying in this job forever. Let's get you on a path to get you into my job one day. I will never forget that. I mean, so that kind of thing that happens in a one-on-one is what makes that happen. Then we talk about the plan. Then the manager is invested in developing that person. And with a consistent one-on-one strategy, you can make that happen. If you cancel one-on-ones or you have them haphazardly, you're leaving it to chance.
Yeah. And you're setting the wrong tone in the organization about how you prioritize it. Right.
Right.
So,
Right.
so I love that. And I love that you pointed out that question that your mentor asked you is like, what do you want to do next? And you're like, I don't know. I haven't even thought about it, but
No one's asked me.
you
I
know
haven't thought
what?
about it.
That question doesn't get asked nearly enough, even still
Right.
today, and
Right.
that's what I want to change. So, but with this career pathing, you probably have some level of skill development, right? If you're like, hey, I'm going to go from a junior recruiter to a recruiter, which I've got a side question to ask about those titles in a second, but you probably say you need to show comprehension and mastery of these skills, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what are your best practices for making sure that that person can get access to the skill development material they need to gain it? Because it can't all be done through trial and error, right? So like,
Right.
what is your model for making sure people are getting the skill development they need so they can truly fulfill that ascension to the next level?
So my model is to put together a talent development action plan for each individual. That includes maybe some on-the-job training and role playing, but beyond that, there are a plethora of resources available to employees today. I mean, you can do a Google search and come up with a lot of great recruiting material on recruiting best practices. So let's say, for example, someone is really relying on the post and wait method, right, to secure a candidate.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. So challenging them, teaching them how to direct recruit and challenging them to do that and measuring the number of placements they make through direct recruiting or through referral solicitation, for example. That's another big miss that we've got staffing referrals and other firms like that automating that for us, which is great.
Yeah.
When I ask at conferences, what's the number one way we get candidates? It isn't through Indeed. No offense to Indeed or any job board. It isn't even the ATS first and foremost. It is by referral.
It really is. And you're right. I mean, staffing referrals does a nice job of that, but you have to have the referral program in place. Like they just automate what's in place, and they're great at it. But yeah.
So I kind of got a little sidetracked there, but going back to developing that recruiter, those are some ideas, right? For how does someone move from level 1 to level 2?
So
and then there are conferences, workshops, ASA certifications, online courses they themselves may seek out, LinkedIn Learning. I mean, there's so many ways for them to expand their skill set and just challenging them, putting together that plan and saying, okay, next quarter, get these 3 things done and we'll regroup and evaluate where you are.
I love that. I love that. So 2 quick side questions, and this is some anecdotal situation that just happened. So the title junior recruiter or junior account manager, I feel like those are definitely been historic titles for development. Do you feel like the title junior, attaching the kind of the sir title junior to a role, has a demoralizing effect to the newest generation that's coming in?
Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to ask my kids that question. My guess is, yeah, honestly, my kids are 27 and 22. So I should ask my 22-year-old that question. My sense is she would probably say no because she knows she's aspiring to something else and that she can
Okay.
get there in a short window of time if she does the right things.
Okay.
That
That's a,
said, that's not everybody, right? So I don't have a crystal ball, but I would guess that if it's presented the right way and someone who is new and being onboarded, I mean, before junior recruiter, you've got the sourcer, right? So
right.
they're screening resumes and assisting other recruiters. How do people feel about the title sourcer? Probably not great. But if they know they're only going to do that for 3 months,
That's fair.
okay, I can live with that, right?
That's fair. Okay. So maybe if there's a level of discomfort, maybe that's motivation to get that sir title off of there and get into the
Heck
full-fledged
yeah,
role. Okay.
absolutely.
All right. I'm digging that. I'm digging that. So I love it. I love the fact that you said, kind of a personalized development plan, for the individual, and you're saying, hey, here are the key areas that you need to work on to be able to ascend into this role. Here's some resources that you can, go see. And I would advise that companies should have like a repository of resources, or in best case would be like a true learning management system where maybe they
Right,
pull, content from trainers like you, or even like Tom Erb, or all the different trainers that are out there. Also, Indeed has some great, content that they can share for training and whatnot, like LinkedIn does as well. And they create those repositories to have almost an internal library that they can tap into. So you're seeing people develop up. So I love that you're doing that, and you're having the managers check in, on a quarterly basis to ensure development. I think
right,
it's a great practice.
right. So having a roadmap, I mean, what gets written down has a much greater likelihood of getting done, right? And then it's the one-on-one
Yeah.
cadence, and it's the quarterly review of the plan. And did you meet your goals? If you didn't, where'd you fall short? How can I help? Do we need to pivot here? So, I think it's good for both parties. It's also developmental for the leader
Yeah,
who may not
absolutely.
be used to such hands-on kind of mentoring and coaching. It's really about coaching.
No, it's all about coaching at that point. It's how coaches are designed to get the best out of their people, and put them in the right
Right.
situations and equip them with the right tools. So I agree with that. So what's next on the list? What's that next challenge that your people are seeing that you're equipping them for?
So the third thing, and this goes back to the interesting economic times we're in, talk of an impending recession. One day I read it's gloom and doom. The next day I read, no, we're not really headed for recession. It might be a mild downturn. We're all seeing mixed things, right? We do see enterprise companies laying off, particularly in the IT space right now. There's a lot of layoffs.
Yeah.
So that even just whispers, in my experience in this industry of the ups and downs and ebbs and flows of economic times, even when there's a whisper of a recession coming, buyers pull back.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing right now, I mean, my clients had record years in 2022. They anticipated that continuing into 2023. And we all know what January's like. January kind of makes us all go, right?
Yeah.
So it's generally the slowest month of the year. But what they're reporting is typical of early recessionary skittishness. And that's
Hmm.
two things. They're dragging their feet on existing job orders, right? So want to see more candidates. Yeah, we thought we were going to extend this person an offer. We think we're going to hold off for a few weeks. So there's some of that going on. And there is in certain verticals, there's reduced order flow coming in.
Yeah.
So that makes them nervous. And so I'm having a lot of discussions right now about the pendulum, right? So again, what's interesting right now, still heavy skill shortages and low unemployment, but we've got this concern about earnings and talk of a recession. When that happens, we've got to turn our attention to the new business development effort. And that's a place most staffing agencies haven't had to live in
Right?
at least 5 years.
By 10.
Yeah, a very long time. So now my conversations are about, all right, who's focused on new biz dev? What are we doing? What does lead generation look like? Have we automated that? Because now I think if we do hit a recession, we're going to be fighting each other for job orders again.
Yeah.
So it's going to be get back in front of the customer, and they're not used to that. Some people in staffing agencies today have never lived through that.
Most salespeople that are out there today have not. They've not had to
They
fight for
haven't.
business the way that they're about to. I agree with that.
Right. So that's my third. The third trend is turn your attention, shore up your sales organization.
So I've got two questions left for you around this topic, and I'm gonna ask them both right now so we don't forget them. But one, I do want to dig into that piece that you said about existing clients dragging their feet a little bit and see if you have like a technique or something that you share with recruiters that can maybe help expedite or leverage the urgency to get candidates still placed or kind of move those clients faster, quicker. And then just what your general take is on your approach to prospecting or selling now, and if it's shifted since the pandemic or the digital transformation. So those are the two that I want to tackle with our remaining time. So do you have a technique that you advise recruiters or people to manage their clients to move them forward quicker if they're sitting on a candidate?
Okay, so the first is to remind them that we're still in a candidate's market and that this individual that they have met and liked likely will not be around in 3 weeks. So it's the old, you've got somebody that you are ready to hire. What do we have to do to get that over the hump? Sometimes it's a hiring manager, very often it's a hiring manager we're talking to. Is there anything we can do on our end to help push that forward? Maybe it's craft an email about this candidate maybe having multiple offers right now that this hiring manager can forward to their boss and get some budget dollars released where maybe there's a hiring freeze in the organization. So the threat of losing a candidate they like, if we position that carefully and we're pleasantly persistent about following up, that's our best defense there. It's really an offensive strategy.
What is so as you say that, it sparks an idea with me. What is your thought about also maybe framing it to the hiring manager, say, hey, if I understand you might be timid or a little nervous to take on new talent right now because of this impending recession. However, it's going to be the level of talent that you have on your team that's going to help you successfully navigate the recession. So you have an opportunity to strengthen your team going into that. Like, why not do that? Is there an element of maybe even positioning to what, like judo, right? You're using their argument against them to say, actually, you're hurting yourself by not hiring this person. Like, is that an approach that you think would work?
Absolutely. I think you put that in your script toolkit, right? What is that open position costing you?
Yeah.
And what happens if you do have more turnover? What happens if there's a layoff at your organization and you don't have this job filled? So what can I do to help you get it filled? So I think that's part of the scripting that we, as recruiting managers, branch managers, etc., we arm our recruiters with, or our salespeople, depending on your model, whoever's interfacing with the hiring manager,
Right.
making sure that they have that in their toolkit. I love that one, actually.
Awesome. So going back to the final question around your third challenge that I wanted to discuss is what are you seeing that's different? Like, I feel like there's been a different result to the traditional prospecting out there. I feel like the digital transformation and things being more virtual and people being more I don't want to say displaced, but distributed workforces has changed traditional prospecting. Have you seen that? Like, what do you think is the best approach to really sell well and effectively as we move forward after the pandemic?
I have seen that. I think where today's automation can help us is in that lead generation, right? Driving client, what reason would a client or potential client have to hit our website with a plethora of staffing agencies they have to potentially buy from? So figuring, thinking like the buyer, making sure our messaging targets the buyer and then encourages them to fill out a contact form. So anything that is bringing in leads for the sales team that we can automate, we should. I think that's on the front end. That's where just as we've used candidate lead generation tools, you just have to develop the same kinds of approaches for potential buyers. After that, though, I still think it's a relationship business.
Yeah.
I think once the lead comes in, and this really kind of depends on the vertical in terms of how today's account manager or BDM can sell. maybe you can sell 100% by phone or Zoom or Teams or whatever, and not have to go see somebody. I think that's really hard in the light industrial segment. I think that
Yeah.
buyer still relies heavily on somebody dropping in, checking in, dropping off donuts. I mean, I think some of the things we did in the old days are still relevant there.
Yeah.
Now that the world is open back up. So I would caution a firm that's been over reliant on the phone and video. Video is the next best thing to face, but I would caution firms not to abandon that strategy
Right.
or to return to it, I should say, if they put it on hold.
That makes sense.
And
No,
a lot of that depends on the size of your firm. How big, are we in territories? Do we have feet on the street, BDMs out there knocking on doors? Now, I think there's a place for that. The other thing I think that's interesting to take advantage of when you use technology for is networking. So virtual networking, making sure you have a strong social presence, joining groups, joining meetups. I mean, some of those things that we didn't have at our disposal years ago, I think are important ways to connect with potential buyers.
Yeah, I agree with that. Jump into the front end there, what you mentioned, like ways to automate it. Do you have like any tools or resources that you've heard people be successfully using to kind of automate prospecting traffic back to a contact form or generate leads for the sales team? Anything you're seeing out there that seems to be working?
Well, I think not any particular tool, but I think I would go in the direction of Talent Tech Labs to help with that. I mean, you probably are familiar with Talent Tech Labs. They consult in the tech stack space, or they probably have their ear to the ground on the technologies that are most effective there. And you can get that through American Staffing Association as well. So that dashboard, right? You need a magnifying glass to read it. There's so many vendors and so many technologies out there. But I do have a client that hired a great marketing mind, and built that internally. Now that's their secret sauce.
Yeah.
They're not going to share with anybody. But what I can tell you is it's homegrown and it works.
Awesome.
Their sales team does very little prospecting. They come in every morning to fresh leads that they follow up on.
Hey, everybody, there's hope yet.
There is. It's not all smiling and dialing. However, smiling and dialing also still works that organic way. Cold calling, which people hate, and they hate to admit that it works, but it does work. So there's still a place for that too.
I agree with that. I agree. So, well, I will say I'm grateful for your time and your insights. And in kind of a parting shot, I know that you have a lot of training offerings. I know that everyone that I've talked to that have been through your programs got immense value out of it. So, and it was an amazing humble brag to say that all of your clients had banner 2022s, and you should be proud of that. So, what is the best way if someone wants to get a hold of your content and learn more about millennial mentors or what you're offering through, Bingham Consulting and your training there? Like, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you or take a look at what you offer?
Well, they can call me. I welcome phone calls, and they can hit my website. They can link in with me. We can start a dialogue there. But yeah, information on my offerings is pretty detailed on my website. My next Millennial Mentors class will start in April. Haven't secured the date yet. So I run them quarterly, right? I take up to 20 people. We're on a Zoom call like this. It's a 1-hour call. I teach them something. They go implement it. They come back the next week. We debrief that. I teach them something else. So that's the model. So we're midway through first quarter program. And the next one will start in April. So that's leadership development is really where I'm focused in terms of training.
Do you have a sign up form for that? That's like people could sign up to get on that list or whatnot right now?
Yes.
I'm going to put a link to that on page right here, because I know there's a lot of people that need that, and they will.
Okay.
I assure you, if you're watching this video right now, be aware that you need to have leaders that can develop leaders if you want to grow and thrive through what's ahead. So, and that's right. That's the program to do it. So, Amy, thank you so much for being here and just sharing with us and just kind of enlightening us to what you see ahead and some very tactical ways to approach it.
You're welcome, Dan. Thanks for having me. Take care.